2 weeks after French Prime Minister Michel Barnier resigned, Emmanuel Macron has announced France's fourth consecutive government in 1 year. His new Prime Minister, Francois Bayrou, is going to be heading the new government. In appointing Bayrou, Macron aims to bring in political stability and bring together a deeply split parliament. But behind the big tasks is an even larger desperation of Emmanuel Macron to stay in office long enough to do what he has said that he would do. 73-year-old Bayrou is a stalwart of the centrist political ideology in France and one of President Macron's earliest supporters. Now, this latest French government's key challenges include passing a budget over which the parliament has been divided and navigating a fractured French legislature with no clear majority. Bayrou's first major test will be on the 14th of January when he delivers his inaugural policy speech to the National Assembly of the country. There might be a no-confidence motion introduced as well against him, even though French prime ministers are not required to or obliged to seek a vote of confidence. So Bayrou's path won't be easy ahead, so would Macron's political steps be. Challenging and on the edge. Let's try and get an understanding of what exactly is happening in France and what really this could lead to as far as the European instability is concerned. On Global Mirror, I'm joined by Dr. Swasti Rao. She's a foreign affairs expert. Also joined by Professor Madhav Nalapat, the geopolitical expert. Good evening and namaskar to both of you. Professor Swasti Rao, let me begin with you. Dr. Swasti Rao, beg your pardon. Let me begin with you. What do you think is happening in France? It's been politically unstable for the past 1 year. This is a fourth consecutive government. Emmanuel Macron has finally given, a Santa Claus gift, a Christmas gift to the citizens of France. But is it going to be proving to be a gift for the French citizens who have been grappling with not just political instability, but economic challenges as well?
Right. Good evening to you, Shreya. And it's strange we're discussing French political instability on Christmas Eve, but nonetheless, here we are. I think one has to understand the generic cause for why this is happening. France. The reality is that if you look at the National Assembly, which is their parliament, of course, there are about 577 lawmakers out there, and Emmanuel Macron's government has not been able to get majority support among the 577 lawmakers. Okay, and as a result, because he's president, and of course the president tasks are completely different constitutionally in France, what is happening is that no matter which prime minister he appoints, the task of the prime minister is actually to get the French budget passed. And for getting the French budget passed, because there is so much political, difference of opinion on the economic matters, that France is undergoing a lot of economic, strain right now. And because if you want to get this passed, you have to raise taxes, and where the political difference of opinion comes. And as a result, no matter who comes, they are not able to actually get it passed. And as a result, they face a no confidence motion, and then there is chaos again. And that is the basic reason why you have been seeing a quick succession of prime ministers under Macron. Now, very quickly, two things about Mr. Bayrou. Would he be able to get it passed? I don't think so. I think if you look at Marine Le Pen's recent statements, I think she is very right in saying that, and her anger is also justified, because it is a fact that she was the one who actually got the most number of votes. And if you remember what drama unfolded after the snap elections that Macron called around the time of the Paris Olympics, right? And even though she and her party was the one that actually polled the maximum amount of votes, but Macron, because of his political genius and calculations, actually avoided a cohabitation, which is that he still avoided getting a prime minister from her party or herself. And instead, he has been using his powers as a president to try and avoid cohabitation and get somebody from the centrist party. And because they do not have a majority in the 577 lawmakers in the National Assembly, they are actually now losing again and again. So very quickly, is Marine Le Pen or the opposition in France going to allow for Mr. Bayrou to now pass with this new budget? No, this is not going to happen. Ultimately, they are also going to face a no confidence motion. I think I'm very confident about that. Yes, I'm very confident about that.
Okay.
What happens to
so
Mr.
we'll have to
Macron
wait and watch, of course, Dr. Swasti Rao.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. We'll come to this one by one, Dr. Rao. I know there's a lot of decoding that needs to be done in the French political chaos, but let me also get in Professor Nalapat into this conversation. Professor Nalapat, Europe, not just France, but we've also seen Germany in the past going through political instability with Olaf Scholz losing that no confidence motion. Emmanuel Macron called for snap elections himself. That turned out to be a challenge for himself. In fact, he dug up his own political grave when he did that. How do you see this European political instability, the economic challenges that they're going through, impacting the entire world? Because there have been concerns about whether, whether Europe's problems will become the world's problems. Would we see that happening?
Well, the fact of the matter is that, first of all, allow me to wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year to all the viewers, and of course to my distinguished co-panelist.
Thank you, Professor Nalapat.
I'd like to say very frankly that, thank you so much. I'd like to say frankly that President Macron is very badly damaged in the same way as Scholz has been damaged, and frankly, Keir Starmer is allowing himself to be damaged. And this is by a war in Ukraine that is unwinnable, that has cost a lot of money, that is costing a lot of lives, and frankly has become deeply unpopular among a huge section of the population in all the countries of Europe. It's also caused problems of logistical supply of commodities. It's had an impact, therefore, on prices of commodities. It's had a knockdown effect on, frankly, the economies of all these countries. And you're seeing even the German economy sputter to a halt and recession, thanks to Scholz being shoulder to shoulder with Macron, at that time Boris Johnson, and of course Joe Biden, in trying to supercharge the Ukraine war to weaken Russia. Russia is not the primary, the primary issue or the primary problem. It's not Europe anymore. Sorry, Europe, it's not you. And it's not Russia. It's Asia, and it's China, and it's the Indo-Pacific. And poor Macron did not get it right. He's very shrunk politically, but in no other way, of course. But I'd like to say that he did not get it right. So the Ukraine war has taken its toll on a lot of politicians. It's taken its toll on Biden. It's taken its toll on Johnson and Sunak. It's now taking its toll on Keir Starmer, and it's taken its toll on Macron. So frankly, whoever Macron chooses is not going to succeed because the shadow of Macron looms over him. And in France, as Dr. Rao, who's a master at these subjects, will tell you, the president is the kingpin and not, frankly, the prime minister. Now, Marine Le Pen, I think she made a bit of a tactical error in playing up somebody, a young person, as as basically almost like a successor. When the fact is, it's Marine Le Pen that French voters want, just as it was Donald Trump that American voters wanted. So Marine Le Pen is now recovered from that. She's come front and center, and her target is the French presidential election. She's not bothered about the prime ministership. She's concerned about becoming the next president of France. And if there's a two-sided contest, that is, if there's a knockout blow and only two parties are there, she may well make it. So, Shreya, there's a lot at stake. Macron took a big gamble on Ukraine, and every
there is, of course,
who's taken a gamble on Ukraine on the side of supercharging the war against Russia has lost or is in the process of losing, as Macron is, and I'm sorry to say, the shaky government. Let me just say, Shreya, I think Macron will establish a record of the number of prime ministers during his term as president. Thank you.
Well, that's right. Four has already been there, but we'll have to wait and watch. And of course, Europe's concerns are also now increasing with Donald Trump coming back as the US president. Dr. Swasti Rao, how do you now see the political future of Emmanuel Macron, considering also the fact that not just France, but the entire European continent is also seeing a rise of the far-right parties, some sort of dominance in some way happening in the elections that take place there?
So very quickly on the question of what happens to Macron. See, according to the French Constitution, the president can still continue. I mean, he can continue as president until 2027, and after that he cannot run because this is the second time that he is going to continue as president. So that's the first part. And as a president, he's the one in charge of security and defense relations and foreign policy, while the prime minister is in charge of domestic things and economic things and budgets and so on and so forth. So technically speaking, Macron can still continue with this electoral acrobatics that he's doing right now and keeping everybody entertained. And he can continue with it until 2027. But what is very, very clear, Shreya, and it cannot be overstated, that he is going through a major crisis of legitimacy because the French electorate has been promoting him out again and again. And it is only because of constitutional provisions that he's still carrying on. And he seems to be very, very defiant when it comes to continuing until 2027, regardless of what. So we will have to see. I do not have hopes that Macron is going to step down because he doesn't technically require to. Although, like I said, that of course it is a crisis of his legitimacy. And somewhere you can also argue that this casts a shadow on his political party because the way he's kind of completely drained himself out in the public trust. That's one. The other thing is about what happens. Now, very quickly, this actually the problem that you see in France and other countries is not just because of Ukraine. Please, let's understand that this circle of deficit and debt that you see the major economies in Europe going through has actually been happening for years. If you look at the EU rules, because EU functions as a common economic bloc, member states must keep their budget deficits below 3% of their GDPs and the government debts below 60% of the GDP. So this is something which is laid out in the EU constitution. Now, very quickly and without making it too cumbersome, what I wish to tell you is that it is for years that France and major economies have not been able to keep up with these limits and have been overstretching and overstraining their economies. And then COVID added to it, and then Ukraine war added to it. So the kind of crisis that you see in Germany is also somewhere happening because the debt is growing like anything. France, the debt is growing like anything. And this does not have a simple answer because if you now want to do something about it, you have to raise taxes. And how do you raise taxes? I mean, do you go to the middle class to raise taxes? Do you go to the rich to raise taxes? And then finally, you have a phenomena of the rise of the far right. So no matter what the centrist parties do, somewhere they are also looked upon as responsible for not taking the decisions which were required to be taken when the situation was not so dire. Okay. And that is why this is a bottleneck. What happens in the future? I mean, you have a new commission, of course. They are now getting into a lot of, advanced FTA negotiations. They have just completed one with Mercosur, which is a group of 4 South American countries, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay. Now, you know that there is one under negotiation with India. You also know that with Donald Trump coming back, there is an added, pressure on the Europeans because Donald Trump has made it very clear that you have to spend at least 4 to 5% of your GDP if you don't want me to step out from NATO. Obviously, this is something which is very, very ambitious. I have doubts whether they'll be able to do it. But all said and done, they have... So far, they have been saying that they are going to again support Ukraine as long as it takes. So there are a lot of contradictions in these statements. The economy is not really, ready for it. And I would perhaps see a kind of a adjustment, at least in the near future. And after Donald Trump comes to power, we will see, a kind of a policy reform of sorts in order for Europe to
Dr. Swasti Rao, it's going to take a long time for Europe to actually resolve the kind of bottlenecks that you mentioned, the kind of intricacies that are involved in the challenges that Europe is facing. I have paucity of time. I'll have to leave it here. But I think one key conclusion that we can make out of all of this is what Professor Madhav Nalapat said, that, this is not now the world of Europe. It is the world of Asia and an Asian century, as the World Economic Forum also suggested. Thank you very much to both my guests on the show for joining us and sharing their perspective on the French political chaos. With that, let's move on and get you all that has been happening as far as the Christmas celebrations are concerned around the globe. Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem will be muted for the second year in a row due to the ongoing war in Gaza. The city's iconic places, usually bustling with tourists, are empty. The state sends a message to the world for peace and hope this Christmas, but insisting that the world must work to end the suffering of Palestinian people. The charming town of Leavenworth, settled in the Cascade Mountains, has transformed into a winter wonderland. Colourful ornaments, twirls and sequin-covered reindeer sparkle in shop windows as the holiday season peaks. Leavenworth's Christmas magic is undeniable. Tourists enjoy the Christmas joy in Leavenworth this Christmas. For the first time in its 900-year history, girls will form part of the choir performing at the Christmas Day service at London's majestic St. Paul's Cathedral. The choir, which is made up of both adult and child choirs, will perform on Christmas Day under the 365-foot dome of the cathedral. The cathedral, remember, is a place for major events of the palace. While on one side, all of us here on Earth are excited to celebrate Christmas, let's also take a trip to space and see how our astronauts are celebrating it. We're bringing you visuals from the International Space Station, where Sunita Williams and her colleagues are spreading the Christmas cheer and joy despite being away from their families this Christmas. Take a look.
Welcome to the International Space Station as we get ready for the Christmas holidays. It's a great time of year up here. We get to spend it with all of our family up on the International Space Station. There's 7 of us up here, and so we're going to get to enjoy company together. And one of the best things that I like about Christmas is the preparation and just getting ready, the anticipation, everybody getting together and preparing stuff and just getting ready for the holiday. And a couple little things we have here with us to just prepare, which will be sort of fun in a couple days.
You know, in Christmas time, the holiday season, it's about spending time with friends and family and loved ones. You know, this year we're going to be in orbit away from them. So we want to send our heartfelt Merry Christmas, and we hope you have a wonderful holiday. Want to also mention that, you know, we're not the only ones that are going to spend time away from our families over the holidays. There's a huge team on the ground that's going to support us in mission controls around the globe over the holidays, and I want to thank them for the sacrifices that they're making. Together, we work hand in hand with the ground every day, and over the holidays, we keep this mission going. Merry Christmas.
And Christmas is synonymous with food and feasting. And boy, do we have a feast packaged up here.
And of course, Christmas is Christ. Hallelujah. A Savior is born.
So from all of us to all of you, Merry Christmas.